Hello, everybody. As usual, I look like a hot mess. Okay, but anyway, show goes on, right? All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. If you are unfamiliar with the show, let me tell you what the show is about. So, this is the show where we like to have real talk about real topics, you guys. We like to talk about certain things in our purview. So, we like to focus on things in education, health, mental health, entrepreneurship. We cover a lot. We've done topics on disabilities, homeschooling, self care, resiliency. Trying to think, trying to remember what else. What else did we do? Mindset. We did a lot of that stuff. So we like to cover those particular grounds, but we like to have real talk about it, and that's what the show is about. The show is about real talk. I am looking forward to this episode today because I have a repeat guest, you guys. I have a repeat guest, and she is coming back to the hot seat. I love it when the guests come back to the hot seat. But we have a brand new topic today, and I'm actually looking forward to this topic, and I'm curious to see where we'll go with this. So let me tell you what the topic is today. So the topic today is mom shaming. Mom shaming. How many of you have done that? I know I have. I'll admit it. So I'm curious to see where this conversation is going to go. So, mom shaming is the topic for today. And my guest today, she's actually returning. She was on the prior episode about living with ADHD. So, check that out. I believe it's episode 80. But her name is Sarah Stelmach. Oh, I forgot how to pronounce her name already. I'm sorry. Sarah Stelmach-Brown. And no, Mac, I remember. Sarah Stelmach-Brown. She just gave me a thumbs up backstage. And let me just remind you that she is a caregiving advocate with a major focus on autism and Alzheimer's disease. And she is the host of her own podcast, Caregiver Chronicles, which we will reference later today. All right, so without further ado, I'm just going to bring her to the stage. Hi, Sarah. How are you
Hello.
doing?
Thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you for coming back. Thank you for coming back to the hot seat. All right, so I am curious to see where we'll take this conversation. So, mom shaming, I saw it as one of your topics that you're comfortable discussing. So, I want to hear your perspective on it. So, please take the wheel.
So as a mom, I have been mom shamed more times than I can count. And I have in fact shamed other moms, which is something that I am recognizing now is, not okay. So I recognize that I have shamed other moms in the past, and I'm trying really hard not to do that anymore because it hurts. There have been mom shame episodes that have made me feel like, oh my gosh, I've done everything wrong. And one layer to that, I have two children who are neurodiverse. Both of my kids are on the autism spectrum, and there's a whole other level of mom shaming that happens in the disability community and in the autism community and the special needs community, parents with ADHD. There's they tend to fall victim of it more. But a little research I did before this episode and looking at some studies, only 61% of moms admit to being mom shamed, which is such an interesting statistic because I feel like every mother I know can say at one point in time somebody has shamed them. And I think that when we define mom shaming, are we talking about mom shaming from like our moms and our aunts and our cousins and our siblings and like our family and friends, or are we talking about mom shaming just the internet? Because those are two very different things. And your parents and your siblings, your friends can absolutely mom shame you and tell you you're not doing this right, or you didn't do this enough, or well, when you were a kid, I did this instead. And that sometimes can be more hurtful than the person on the internet telling you you're a bad mom without knowing you. Um, I don't know if you have perspective on that, but that's just something that I've observed, that, like, hearing it from a parent or a friend, someone you're close with, is always worse than mom shaming by a complete stranger on the internet. And, I just a few weeks ago, I was mom shamed, because I give my kid juice boxes. I was told if I give my kid water, he'll eventually drink it, and wouldn't you know, we've tried it, it didn't work. But yeah, that's just a few little tidbits on mom shaming.
And it's that's thank you for sharing. By the way, I know that that was tough to share. So can we just get into what is it? Like, what is mom shaming? What are some examples?
Absolutely. So the definition of mom shaming is criticizing, like directly criticizing a way a parent, or specifically a mom parents or raises her child. It could be criticizing choices such as how you feed your child. Hot one nowadays, vaccinate. Whether you vaccinate your kids or not. Um, you could be mom shamed for pretty much everything. In the objective of it really is to control the way other women mother their children. So the person who's doing the shaming is, they're not just shaming a mom for being a bad mom, they're shaming a mom for making a decision that's different than they would have made because they want control of the situation. You could shame a mother for not taking her kid to church, or whatever it is. It's usually someone who wants to control other people's parenting styles. And the fact of the matter is, I know and you know what works in one household works in that household. It doesn't work in your neighbor's house or the people down the street. Everybody is different. Every family dynamic is different. And just the victimization of mom shaming and the feelings, and just it's just not necessary. It's just not necessary, and it tends to be done so much, both family wise and out with social media has definitely exacerbated it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just frustrating.
So so now what is let me figure out how to ask this. Um what is wrong with mom shaming exactly? Like, what isn't there such thing as bad parenting or unhealthy parenting? Like, why not call that out?
So there absolutely is. You're right. There is downright bad parenting, unhealthy parenting, unsafe parenting. Um there's cases like DCYF might need to get involved with family because of abuse, neglect, uh addiction issues with family members, things like that. That's bad parenting. Giving your kid a juice box, criticizing a mom for dietary choices is not necessarily bad parenting. If my kid eats Skittles, they eat Skittles. If you don't feed your kid candy, that's fine. That's your business. My kid likes the Skittles, so we keep them on hand. It's a motivator. Um, there's a huge difference between mom shaming and saying, "Oh my gosh, that's a terrible thing that mother did." Like, we all read the news. I'm sure there's gruesome examples of horrific things that happen in the world that are abuse, neglect, drug related, things like that. That I don't even want to say, like, those are bad. Those are very, very bad. But mom shaming is more trying to control a mother's choice on parenting. Moms get shamed for homeschooling or putting their kids in public school. I've been shamed for putting my kids in public school. Your kids are neurodivergent. What are you doing putting them in public school? That's kind of the difference. Is between mom shaming and actual bad parenting, mom shaming is choices that you would make that aren't necessarily abuse, neglect, things like that, where bad parenting is straight abuse, neglect.
So you're saying that there is a difference between um, making certain dietary restrictions or certain cultural choices and child abuse, right? And that's true. You know, there is a line, right? So, you know, just because you choose to uh, raise your kids vegan, right, doesn't mean that they're unhealthy, right? You know, the children can still get a healthy amount of protein and carbs and all that other good stuff on a vegan diet, right? They'll have to try it. I mean, it's a lot more work, but or did I just shame? I'm sorry. But
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, just because like you decide to raise your kids vegan, for example, it doesn't mean that you're abusing them. You could still live a healthy diet as a vegan, right? So it's, for example, I'm just throwing that out there. Um, so there is a line, you know, with the way that you choose to raise your child and child abuse. So I will say I've uh, not what's the word? Not a victim. I've been the perpetrator of mom shaming. I'll admit that um, usually when it comes to discipline, I say like when I see like the mom yelling at the child, like, "What are you doing? Get over here! Why don't you listen?" And in my mind, I'm like, "Well, the child is not listening because you keep yelling at them all the time. You know, like, why do you keep yelling at the child? Like, that's not fair." Like, um, and I wanted to hear your thoughts um about discipline when it comes to mom shaming.
So that's a really tricky gray area for a lot of families, and I'll gladly go there. I've
It's hot
yelled at my
topics.
kids.
Let's do it.
I've yelled at my kids on more than one occasion. I'm not perfect. I will never ever sit and say that I'm a perfect mom. I don't yell at them all the time, but I can only say, unload the dishwasher so many times before my voice escalates. And that's, I think that's pretty common. In as far as discipline in shaming, there's, in the state of Connecticut, there, you can legally spank your child whether you want to or not. That's up to you as a parent. um in the state of Connecticut, you can legally spank your child as long as it's with an open palm hand. You're not leaving a mark. It's not with an object. Back when I was a kid, I don't know about you, but back when I was a kid in the 90s, lots of kids got belts or a paddle or whatever. That's,
Horseshoe.
yeah, well, that's illegal now. That is considered abuse. If you're leaving a mark, that's considered abuse versus, a spanking. And I have a nonverbal autistic son. There has been times where I have been cooking on the stove and he's gone to put his hand in that hot pan because he wants what's in it and doesn't know any better. And I have swatted his hand away, and you could hear the little clap. It's better than the burn. The little, he'll look at me
Yeah.
insulted, like, "Why did you do that?" And I'm like, "No, hot, boo boo." And, then kind of shoo him away. But what, so there is a time. I'm not like a huge, like, I'm not really big into spanking. But I do know that, or even swatting my kids. I always feel terrible if when I swat at a hand.
Mhm.
But again, what do you do? How do I get him away from that? I can't get the words out fast enough, and he doesn't respond to no. He's nonverbal. He doesn't understand. It's, you know, um, how do I get his hand out of there fast enough? And if that swat works, it's better than the third-degree burn he's going to get sticking his hand in a pot of boiling water. Um, so that's kind of where common sense comes in with that. I believe. Um, but again, there's with discipline. I don't think kids misbehave just because of a lack of discipline. There can be so many reasons. Both of my kids have ADHD. Both of my kids are autistic. Right there, there's reasons for outbursts and behaviors, whether it be in public or at home. Neurodivergent burnout is a real thing. It's something I've experienced, something my kids experience. My older one will come home and be like, I just need to go in my room. I had to be around too many people today and I am stressed, and give him that space. Um it does not make him a bad kid. He's actually a very
Yeah.
good kid. He's a very smart kid. Um but he's neurodivergent. His brain, around a lot of people, he gets nervous. If and you scare an adult, they might scream. What do you expect an 11-year-old to do? And being mom shamed over behaviors of your kids is silly, because every single kid I know has had episodes in stores. Me and my friends will sit and compare notes of the episodes in stores, and our kids having meltdowns and how other parents responded. I have a great one about Target. My kid wanted a cake pop, told him to have breakfast before we left, refused to have breakfast. This is my verbal 11-year-old. He refused to have breakfast, wanted a cake pop, told him he was not getting a cake pop because he would need his breakfast. Screamed through Target, cried the whole time, I'm hungry, we're in line, we're buying some groceries and random things, because Target. And I tell him, well, you can eat when you get home, and he's yelling, there's no food there! As
Oh
everyone
no.
is looking at, he's like, you're making me starve, there's no food at home. And mind you, he's like this little skinny kid, he's always been below the curve. So I'm sure a lot of parents thought a lot of things about me there that day. And I'm sure that there was probably a parent standing there who's like, yeah, my kid did that to me once too. It just, what can you do but laugh? I mean, I didn't laugh at the time. I wanted to like scream, but what do you do? You know?
So, I mean, if we could pick at that a little bit. So, what was going through your mind when he said that?
Oh God, I was so embarrassed. I I just wanted to like scream and cry and die right there. And I was like, fortunately, my husband was the one who like came up with we had food at home. You chose not to eat it. We told you if you didn't eat breakfast, you couldn't get a cake pop. And my husband said it loud enough where everybody could hear it. So we didn't look. So then again, it's a relatable situation. My youngest son has had meltdowns in the stores because he wanted to open the chips before we paid for it. It's like, kiddo, we gotta scan that first. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone up to the register with something ripped open. Sorry, he's already gotten to it. Um, but again, he doesn't know any better, and it is what it is. And there is that parent in the line that's looking at me like, in in we have to be a society where when we recognize another mom has a kid who's having a meltdown for whatever reason, whether it is just the kid being a brat, whether it's the kid
Yeah.
being neurodivergent, whether it's the kid having a need that's not met, or just having a bad day, we need to like, instead of judging that parent and saying, oh, that parent's a bad parent because of that 15 minutes you see them, we need to put ourselves in their shoes, because if you're a parent, you've probably been there at least once.
So now there's a lot of thoughts in my head as I hear you talking, but so now then you have those parents um that'll intervene, like if they'll see um okay, so if someone saw your interaction, that interaction that you were just talking about, you'll have the random parent that'll just come up and say, hey, don't talk to your mom like that. Like, so what do you say to those parents that that'll just intervene in someone else's business? Or is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, how do we do parents take a step back, or should they just intervene?
So I have had my youngest son, when we go out, he wears a harness because he's an elopement risk. And I have actually had people say things like, "Oh, he's like a dog," or oh, actually I had someone say to me once, "Oh, is he a rescue?" And I didn't hit the person. I should get special credit just for that, for just ignoring them. But and I've even had people when my kids have had meltdowns. Oh, well, when my kid did that, I did this, and I will tell them flat out, my son is nonverbal autistic and an elopement risk. My son is autistic. Yeah, I can. I maybe I do play that card a little bit. Um, but you know what? It's the truth. You know, but I think that when a parent comes in and says, "Well, when my kids were young or when my kid we did this," if you have every right to set your boundary and say, "Nope, we're having a bad day, just leave us be." Cuz you don't need that. I have had parents do the complete opposite of that and say, "Both of your kids are screaming. You want me to just walk you to your car?" And I'm just like, I can just walk you to your car. If you need to talk, we can talk. Help make sure they get there safe. Um, that's what every parent should do. Is the second one. Hey, what can I? Is there something I can do to help? I see you're struggling. I've been there before. How can I help? And that's how we kind of eliminate that mom shaming by being supportive. It's rather than being like, "Oh, well, I did this." Well, you don't know a person's entire backstory off of 15 minutes or 10 minutes in the store with them. You just don't.
Yeah, and I feel bad now because I'm like, I thought all those things. I didn't say anything, but I had all those those thoughts in my head. Whenever I see, um, like the kids in the harnesses or the leashes, or my thought, I've had that thought like, they're not dogs. Like, why are you doing that? Um, so now, what do you, excuse me, what do you say to the people that say, like, well, you chose to be a mom, you chose to be a parent, it's your responsibility,
It
that's what you get for having kids.
it is your responsibility. You're a parent, and if you're there with your kid, obviously you're taking care of them. And if they're having a bad moment, they're a kid. I don't I every I don't know any adult who hasn't had a bad day once. You know what I mean? Like kids have bad days too. They have feelings, they have fears, they have anxieties, they have all the things adults have. It's they're just kids though. They're in a smaller body. Um yeah, having kids was a choice for me, and yeah, I have to raise them. I love my kids, it's they're the greatest things that ever happened to me. They made me actually become a better, more kinder, more accepting person, because before I had kids, if I saw a kid on a leash, I would think, "Oh geez, what a crappy parent. They can't even control their kid." Well, now I have the nonverbal child who will in a split second take me down with him and run into the street or somewhere unsafe and will never get him back. Um Having that kid, I I have a whole other level of empathy, um,
Mm.
for all parents, not just in my situation, but, and we don't like, we do, we in because we don't know what goes on in our neighbor's house, we can't relate to their lifestyle because we don't live there. Every house, every family, every situation is different, and we have to remember that when we're in places and we see kids having episodes, or we hear moms getting frustrated, overwhelmed, and just say, "Oh, you chose this." You're gonna tell a healthcare worker, another like a similar analogy. I was a healthcare worker during the pandemic, and something someone had said to me was, "Oh, you chose your job, so if you get COVID and die, it's your own fault." And it was like, how, like, what a terrible thing to say, like, to just say, you chose to be a mom, so if your kid has X, Y, and Z issue, it's your own fault. It's just a day, it's just a moment, it's a thing. Nobody deserves to be shamed or ridiculed because they're having a bad day.
Yeah, and it's tough to so now is it easy to because I'm not a mom. I don't have any kids. So now is it so when you have people women who aren't moms or anyone who's not a parent, um, do you think it's easy for them to understand? Let me phrase it this way. Do you think it's easy for people who aren't parents to understand what parents are going through? Or do you think is it just a parent to parent thing?
I think sometimes mom shaming is worse when it comes from other moms, and parent shaming is worse when it comes from other parents. I think I like everyone has the choice to become a parent or not. And if you want to be a parent, that's awesome. Like good for you. And if you don't, that's awesome too. One of my best friends does not have children, and I am happy for her. She's living a good life. It's in everybody. I would never shame someone for making that decision either way. I can tell you as a parent, there have been times where I've been like, if I didn't have kids, I could go on vacation wherever, or I could do X, Y, and Z. But I have kids, so I'm gonna spend my time doing stuff with them. I'm fine with it. I don't mind it. And I know my friends who don't have kids might someday say, "Oh, if I had a kid, they'd take care of me now that I'm 90." That's okay too. There's really no right or wrong way to live our life, but I always feel like parent shaming is always worse from other parents versus people who don't have kids. And I think maybe it's just because we can say to ourselves, they don't have kids, so they don't get it yet. They don't understand exactly what it's like to have kids until they do. They don't, they're not there. And a lot of times I find people who don't have kids just don't care as much. They hear a kid screaming in a store and they're just like, okay, whatever. And they kind of go off and do their own thing. Usually it's other parents who are there's way more pressure from them.
Mhm.
There's way more pressure to be like them. And you look at other parents sometimes and you think, this other parent is a way better parent than me. My sister, I look at my sister and her parent, she's a way better parent than me. And she'll call me for parenting advice like my kids won't eat any vegetables. Like, how did you get your kid to eat Chinese food or this vegetable or lettuce or tomatoes? They just do. And I'll be like, how do you get your kids to do blank? Because mine won't. And she has a degree in early childhood education too. So I only have experience with my kids. Um very different experiences, but it's just funny because I think we all do that. And I don't know, I think the parent shaming from non-parents is easier to digest.
Right, because you could just brush
You
it
just
off and say,
chuck it
well,
off. They don't know what they don't know.
you don't
Yeah.
know, you don't know, you're not a mom,
And
you're
like
not a
I
parent,
said,
you don't know.
yeah, and like I said before, I think it's worse when it comes from family. Like when it's your mom or your aunt saying to you, not that this really happens, but when they say to you, "Oh, you're doing a terrible job at blank," or "I can't believe you did blank with your kid," or "You never took your kid to this place and I always took you to that place." Um whatever. I think when it comes from family, it's way harder to digest than even strangers on the internet.
Why do you think that is? What, like, what? Tell us more about that. That
Well,
it's
psychologically, are the people that we're close to, our family, our friends, um, our loved ones, people in groups that we admire, or people that we do admire, their opinions matter to us more than anyone else's. If some lady in the store wants to roll her eyes at me, I don't care. But if my mom comes in and says, "Oh my god, I can't believe your house looks like it does right now. You're terrible. You're failing at adulting." That hurts way more because it's my mother. You want, the value, the opinions of people who are close to you. You value them so much more than other people.
right. There's more weight in the words that they say.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just as you're talking, I'm thinking about what other ways that we mom shame. So I'm thinking like the choosing between breastfeeding and giving formula. Um, what
A fed
else?
baby's a happy baby.
Yeah. Or with a baby in a stroller as opposed to a sling. Um,
Sometimes you need your arms. Gotta do what you gotta do.
um, I'm trying to think what else. Discipline, do you just do you spank or do you just, use words? The type of discipline. Even with education, homeschool or public school. Um, I mean, and again, I've I'm guilty of mom shaming. I'll say that. Um, and like even particularly when it comes to education, like I'll the different kids that I tutor, I see that actually I'll give a better example. So like kids in a group, right? Because I um whenever I work with a group of kids, right, there's always the kids that are like they'll sit still, and there's the ones that are always running around and screaming, and I see the kids running around, and I'm like, you know, why are they running around? Like, what is the mom doing? What is the dad doing? Like, what are the, what are these? I don't want to say good kids, bad kids. I'm trying to refrain from saying that, but the kids that are uh more behaved are, like they have the parents are on them, that they're involved in their education, and the ones that are not so well behaved, the parents are, not so involved. And I am guilty of having those thoughts. And even when it comes to tutoring, there's the kids that, they're on it, they're smart, they're attentive, they're grasping information easily, and I'm like, okay, their parents are on it. And then the ones that are falling behind, they're 2, 3, 4 levels behind, and I'm like, what are you doing as a mom? What are you doing as a dad? So what do you, I mean, what do you say to people like that, or to people like me, that when it comes to education, and and it's like, what, why aren't you involved in your kids' education?
So I can speak as both that kid who was struggling in school and the adult who has the wild children, the little crazy Tasmanian devils. Um, I think maybe that's a better word than bad kid, the Tasmanian devils. Uh, I was the kid that struggled in certain subjects. My mom would spend hours sitting with me, and she would have to, because of my ADHD that we talked about in the past the episode that I was in before, she would have to break my homework down question by question by question, because when I saw that huge paper, I couldn't do it because I was overwhelmed. And sometimes if you just break things down, it makes it easier. My oldest son, I'm very fortunate. I don't have to do much for him to have academic success. We had ABC Mouse when he was a little kid, taught himself reading, taught himself division, and I have been very lucky on that front. My other kid is, he's 7 years old. He's nonverbal. He's still in diapers. He's the kid you talk about that he's behind in everything. And it's not that I'm not involved in his education, because I'm emailing the school every day, asking them what he's working on. I am at therapies with them. I will tell the school sometimes, I think he can do X, Y, and Z. They can't get him to sit still. I can't get him to sit still at home either. He won't sit down for a meal. Um, I think sometimes I think it's sometimes just the kid, the way they see the world, the way the world reacts to them. Um, and you can, there are cases where you can blame the parents. The parents didn't work with the kids. Yes, that does happen. But what I've seen most for in my experiences, what I've seen most with my kids, my nieces and nephews, who are two very active little kids, very smart kids, but very active little kids. They're also Tasmanian devils. Um, But again, they're very smart. It's not for a lack of not working with them. It's just they're just super crazy active kids. And I I think that telling the parent, I maybe coaching the parents rather than shaming them, saying, hey, let's try this as a team, and this might help your child with, getting overwhelmed with the 7 steps, or give them a break. Every 3 problems, they get a break. If it's a kid that needs to move, tell them do 3 math problems and run around, or go jump on a trampoline for a minute, or answer these 2 questions and you can stretch. Sometimes you gotta meet the kids where they're at. Sometimes, I'm sure you have such an extensive background in education, so you just have to think about it as a, is it really the parent, or is it the kid just isn't there yet, isn't at that level yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, I don't know if my background is that extensive, but it's tough to say because in my experience, I do think that a lot of the academic issues that I see is because of of like they're not, well, let me rephrase it this way, that I think a lot of the issues can be addressed if the parents were involved more, like if they actually went to the schools and actually learned what they had to do, or if they actually spoke to the teachers, if they actually sat with their child and had them do the homework, as opposed to just, okay, go do your homework. Like actually sit with them and make sure they do it. So I've seen instances where I think that if there was more personal involvement, that there would be more improvement academically. Um, and then I've seen parents that don't really care, or they don't really value education, I should say, as much as getting a job. So, um, so I guess I've seen a lot of um, parents that don't really want to be, maybe not, or they want to be, but okay, but they may not have the time to be as involved because they're working a full time, single parents, things like that. Um, so I guess I've just seen, I guess that's in a way that shaped my view of parents, and I feel kind of bad now because I tend to see, the ones that I tend to see are the ones that are like, I can't deal with my kid. You do it. So, and I guess that in a way that's kind of shaped my view.
And I can kind of relate to that in a way too. My grandparents, my mom's parents, had no higher than a 6th grade education. So my mom was actually the first person in that line to graduate high school, and she also went on to graduate college with an associate's degree. That was a huge deal, for my grandparents to have a daughter that graduated college. Mind you, my mom graduated with her associate's degree when I was 20 years old, or 21 years old. So that was a long path for her. That was a very long path for her. And my grandparents, it wasn't that they looked down on education or didn't value it. It was that they worked in mills, they worked as painters. They didn't have education. They couldn't help. And I don't know every family. I know my 11-year-old, he's already coming home with papers on like the Fibonacci sequence, and telling me he's studying exponents and things in math that, like, that was like beyond where I was getting. And he's come home with papers on the Fibonacci sequence because he's in like a math enrichment where they go, he's levels ahead in
Yeah.
math. This child is levels ahead in math. So I know that the day is going to come where he is going to need help with his math homework, and I'm not going to be the person. and my husband's already said, "Can't help you." Um, he's already, he's already really close to that line where his regular homework is gonna be beyond what I know, and it makes me proud in a way as a parent. It makes me really proud to know that my kid is gonna be smarter than me or is, not. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it makes me proud to know that my kid is gonna have better opportunities and better education than I got. Not that I got a terrible education, I graduated high school. That's by the standards in some communities, that's a good education. I went on for some college. I have training, post-secondary training certificates, things like that. But knowing that my child is a candidate to be beyond that,
Yeah.
makes me excited and makes me proud. And I know, like I said, I think every family with education and how they value it in their home is different. Education is super important in my home, but it is not as important as physical and mental health. Like
Yeah.
those trump education. Like we want our kids to be smart and well educated, but if you're sick or you're just burnt out or you're depressed and you can't learn well, and you need to take a minute to step back and deal with your stuff and then go forward with education, I'm okay with that. And there are some families who not acceptable. Sniffles, too bad, go to school. It, every every family is different and I can't shame them for that.
So now let's get into the solutions, right? So let's start to hone in on this now. So what is the solution? What is the answer? What what is it? What what do we how do we deal with mom shaming?
It's actually a very simple solution to mom shaming, and it's treating other moms with kindness and empathy. It's it sounds so duh, doesn't it? It just sounds like duh, like obvious. But the best way to prevent mom shaming is to not do it. And when you see it being done, to say, "Hey, I know that you're trying to help that mom, but do you really think that's helpful? Instead, let's try to actually help her by putting your groceries in her car or, walking her to her car or telling her, hey, it's okay, mom. We all have bad days. Because we do, we're all human, right? Trying really hard to come up with supportive sayings rather than, well, when my kids were young, I did this, saying, my kids did the same thing. I've been there. You'll get through it. You'll get through this day. Once you leave the store, everyone will forget about it. You
Mm.
know, don't worry. Go home and take some deep breaths or whatever. That's another great way. And when it happens to you as a parent, if you're the parent who's being shamed or the mom who's being shamed, setting a boundary for yourself is totally okay. It's actually okay to look at someone and say, what you're saying right now, I understand that you would do things differently, but this is not what it is for my family, and I'd appreciate it if you just leave us alone right now and let us work through whatever we're going through.
Right. So basically you're saying like to not to criticize but to comfort, like to say hey, I understand what you're going through. I've been there. My kid does it. Do you need anything? Can I help you with your groceries? Or even just, hey, I understand. I get it. Just a simple, like, hey, a positive, I don't know if it's a positive affirmation, but just a positive acknowledgement, like, hey, I
Yeah,
get it. You know,
yeah.
something,
I
something
really
like
do. I think kindness is the solution to most of the world's problems, but if we could all be kinder, we'd have fewer problems in the world, but
that. So why do we do it? Why do we mom shame?
it's well, again, I think a lot of it is control. A lot of, especially when it comes to things like vaccines and diet choices. Most of it is over choices. Um, it's over most of it is control, and some of it is just not understanding. It's ignorance.
Simply put. Simply put. All right, let's start to wind things down now. All right, so is there any final words of wisdom that you would like to impart on our audience? Any final words?
Yes. If you are in a position where you might be thinking that you're mom shaming someone, step back and think, how would I feel if I were in this situation? Or how can I, instead of negative, how can I put a positive on this? How can I coach and be supportive? If you're a mom who's being shamed, set a boundary. Say, nope, it's not okay for you to say this to me. I'm going to work through this. You go do you, leave us alone. And, both are acceptable. As long as you're being respectful in both manners, it's not mom shaming.
Yeah. So I had a quick question, thought. You said your child is nonverbal with autism. So have you looked into like services, like autism services, or like assistants, or like special caregivers that will be with the child?
That's an incredibly long story. Um,
Okay.
there has been attempts made, and unfortunately where I live, there's a huge lack in services. We've had ABA therapy. My son is in speech twice a week. He's in OT, he's in PT, he's in an intensive special education class. He has an AAC device. So we are working on as many services as we can for him. We had, at one point in time, we had 15 hours of ABA therapy in the home, and I was working full time. So so my house was always a mess, and I had mom shame me. Hey, your house is messy. Well, I have a full-time job, a part-time job, and another kid and a husband. What what more do you want me to do? And this was by a mom who didn't work at the time. So it was like, it was, but and I obviously forgave that person because they didn't understand, because again, you don't understand. But yes, we have pursued services for my son. We're kind of taking a break from ABA right now. Um, the main reason is because I want him to have time to be a kid. He still has speech, OT, PT, and I want him to have time to play and be a kid.
There you go. All right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for joining me today. I know this was a tough conversation, but you made it through. We made it through. Yes. All right. So let's get your promo. All right, you guys. So you can find Sarah Stelmach-Brown. She is all over social media, you guys. You could find her on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and she has a flow page, right? So all of that information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. So I encourage you to find her on social media, right? So Facebook and Instagram, the handle is Caregiver Chronicles 2. That's the number 2. On Twitter, it's Caregiver Chron 1. And YouTube is just Caregiver Chronicles podcast, and she has a flow page that pretty much has everything on there. It's like a link tree. It's flow.page/Caregiver Chronicles. So I encourage you to check her out on all of her social media handles, all of her social media accounts, and follow her on social media, you guys. Zara, do you want to talk about your business or?
Sure, I'd love to. Caregiver Chronicles is a podcast. If you're parenting children who are neurodivergent, we have a lot of great parenting tips on neurodivergence. If you're caring for anybody who has Alzheimer's, or if you're a family caregiver for anybody, this is the podcast for you, because it's what we focus on is family caregivers of children who may have special needs, elder adults, senior care, and we talk a lot about the overlap. I combine my experiences as a professional caregiver, a caregiver for my grandmother who's passed, and a special needs parent, and kind of combine all those skills, tips, and tricks in one podcast. And there's just some great information on there about caregiving, caring for children, caring for seniors.
All right, there you go. So check out her podcast, you guys. It is called Caregiver Chronicles. You can find it wherever there are podcasts, right? So, whatever your favorite podcast station is, check it out. It is there. All right. So, Sarah, thank you again for coming back to the hot seat and joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, you guys. All right, let me get up my banner. All right, so we have reached the ending of yet another episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, I, Gabrielle, would love to hear your feedback about the episode that you just heard. So please drop a comment in the comment thread or the comment section. Please let me know what you thought about this episode for today. So whether you're watching this on video, leave a note in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about this episode for today. And if you're listening on audio, please drop a rating. Let us know what you thought about this show. Drop a note, drop a line, whatever that is. Let us know. I know. Let me know what you thought about our episode for today. And as a reminder, Hot Topics is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So, if you would like to learn more about our company, what we're all about, maybe you're looking for a tutor for your child, or maybe you're looking for a tutor for yourself. Maybe you need some academic assistance. Maybe you hey, maybe you sat for hours and hours, and your child just doesn't is not getting it, or maybe you're frustrated, or maybe you just need a third person or a neutral party. Listen, it happens a lot. We see it a lot. So if you're looking, you just need an outside person, reach out to us. Reach out to us. We are available. Check us out online. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also email us, success@astepaheadtutoringservices.com. You can also check us out on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm missing a couple. YouTube, and there's a couple more. It's not coming to me right now. But we are on several social media platforms, so check us out. And I encourage you to follow us on all of our platforms. So please stay in touch with us as well. I also want to pose a challenge for you guys. I want you to text a friend right now. Let them know, hey, I saw this great podcast about mom shaming. We got to make it go viral. We got to get all the moms on it and the parents on it. So I'm posing a challenge to you guys right now to share this episode with at least two friends. I'm giving you that challenge right now to share this episode with at least two of your friends. Let's get it far and wide as possible. And this final thing I'm going to share, we have a text blast. I'm just trying to get all my thoughts together. We have a text blast. I encourage you to hop on it. Anything and everything about Hot Topics, you will learn through that text blast. You'll learn about live episodes, when the audio releases come out. Sign up for that text blast today. All you have to do is text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. Again, text the code Hot Topics to 917-764-3975. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you. I don't see you, you see me. I look forward to you seeing me or hearing me at the next episode. I look forward to, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. I look forward to you joining us at the next episode. There you go. All right, you guys. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Bye.